And now we are live on Facebook in part 2 of how to defeat a bigger opponent with Systems Judo with Dr. Katherine Horton, who's coming to us from Switzerland. Katherine, please continue.
So where did we leave off? I think before the break, what we were talking about is the need, why we need systems analysis to start with. That's because most of us, excuse me, most of us cannot really take in enough information from our peers. We can only be in touch with at most 60 people for any meaningful amount of time. And our complex systems these days are run by thousands and thousands of people. So we need the tools and we need the a certain view on things that is, top down and is using the laws of the system and in an understanding of the laws of the system to inform our everyday actions. So this was the introduction in the first half. And in the first half, we also had, if I may share my screen to remind people, we had in the first half, we showed a little video clip of Israeli military martial arts where that were used to disarm an opponent with a stick. So these guys are basically training and they are demonstrating how one can actually protect oneself against an opponent that comes at one with a stick. And we showed a very short little sequence of these two guys. And this was using, the entire topic is about systems judo or martial arts. So we wanted to start off with the martial arts link. But I also said this is not about physical violence and tackling people physically, but what it's about is tackling people administratively and using certain methods or, in terms of communication and publicity space or even in the legal system and bringing in a much bigger opponent to fall by using the laws of systems physics. So, this is the judo element is that you, as maybe a single person, can bring a bigger system to fall by just applying your energy and your forces correctly. The judo aspect is really that most of the time when we have to tackle a much bigger system, we are very often actually fighting for either our finances or our well-being or our survival, in my case. So, this is actually a military and martial situation here. But one of the things I wanted to stress, excuse me, sorry, I've been talking a lot for the last couple of hours. So one of the things I wanted to say is that systems judo is something that is used by individuals who have to fight a bigger system, but it's even used by nation states that have to fight bigger nation states or more powerful ones or richer ones. So to bring it home to everybody that this is really something that you can use in everyday life and is used by your government, I would like to bring up the following example. I mean, of course, there's not some sort of, you won't have the Council on Foreign Relations putting out a paper about how a smaller country has used, system judo against them. So you have to kind of read between the lines and recognize the methods of system judo yourself using your brain. So here's an example where I've recognized a country using system judo, and that is, if I can click on this, actually the example of Russia. So here, this is now the advanced course into systems judo, because this is actually a nation state using system judo against bullying from not just the US, but bullying from the entire West. And the clues to the system judo moves are hidden in this wonderful interview with Jim Sinclair. For those who don't know Jim Sinclair or don't know Greg Hunter, by the way, Greg Hunter is a financial journalist in the US. He is the founder of USA Watchdog, that's bringing out every week interviews with financial experts from around the world. A really absolute gold dust hidden away in those interviews, and I encourage everybody to watch them on YouTube. But his guest, Jim Sinclair in particular, is a very, kind of big guy. I mean, really heavy duty here. And Jim Sinclair is an expert on gold, on precious metals trading, and he predicted the top in gold and became famous for that. But also he is in the field of finance and the field of precious metals. He's called Mr. Gold. for the simple reason that he is really the field expert in everything to do with precious metals. So when Jim Sinclair speaks up, I think everybody should shut up and listen very carefully what he says. And I really recommend that you invest half an hour of your time in listening carefully to the interview here, in which Jim Sinclair explains how Russia can collapse the US economy. All right. So when Russia collapses the US economy, it can only be done through System Judo, because Russia is, in terms of its economic power, in terms of its military power, and in terms of its general manpower and infrastructure, much weaker than the US. It has much narrower reach, whereas the US is a global player, has the entire West on its side. Russia is much more isolated, has much tougher territory. A lot of Russia is barely inhabitable by anything apart from bears. But anyway, so, you get the idea. So when suddenly Mr. Gold, the field expert in solid currencies and precious metals, comes out and says Russia can collapse the US economy, what on earth does he mean? And I don't want to go into the full details here. First of all, because I can't, I can't possibly put the wisdom, do the wisdom of Jim Sinclair any justice. But also, I want you to really take your time and actually listen to this video yourself, because if you're in the US, if you're in the West, what is encoded in this half-hour video will be relevant to your survival over the next 5 to 10 years for sure. And this is about the currency wars that are happening globally. So the currency wars are between, obviously, different currencies, but keep in mind that there are more currencies than the ones you actually know about. So there's the fiat currencies. This is the dollar, and the peso and whatever, the British pound and, the euro that you know about. But there are also other systems. There's also precious metals. So silver and gold bars and coins and so on and so on. So what many people don't know is that I think up until the mid-70s, was it, in the Middle East, you could only settle trade using precious metals by law. Okay, this was part of Islamic law. And these days, we're all led to believe that, everything that has the word Islamic in it is just bad for us. But in real terms, actually, the entire Islamic world has seen the games of the cartel, over and over again. And they put in safeguards. And one of the safeguards that was very successful, actually, was so-called Islamic banking. And Islamic banking had several common sense, basically, statutes that you were not allowed to go against, or you were killed for very good reason, because those statutes ensured that the entire system was stable. Now, you will not be surprised to hear that exactly those pillars are now being removed from Islamic banking. So the two main pillars of Islamic banking, as far as I'm aware, and please get the real experts on this to talk on this in more detail, were two things. Number one, you can't have interest on interest and this whole proliferating nonsense. So under Islamic banking, when you take a loan, it's almost like you're renting somebody's car. You pay them a fixed fee, but none of this interest on interest nonsense, because that's going to turn mathematically non-linear at some point and enslave you and enslave the planet, into debt slavery. So that was one thing. Islamic banking, a good thing. It actually ensured stability. But the other thing that they ensured was also that trade can only be settled, large volume trade, in precious metals. That is gold and silver and nothing else. That's that. So what happened? What did the West do in our infinite wisdom? We moved away from this. We have interest on interest, right? We absolutely got ourselves debt enslaved, and also we moved away from precious metals onto so-called fiat currencies, which are they used to be just paper printed. These days, they don't even bother to print a paper. They just create money digitally, okay? And with this, we got ourselves so hogtied that I'm not sure we're going to survive this. So when now Jim Sinclair, the absolute expert on the actual only true currencies, gold and silver, comes out and says Russia can collapse the US economy, please, everybody, listen up, because this goes right to the heart of it. So what's going on? So what this entire discussion is about is, I think this interview goes back to 2014. So, 4 years, it's from 4 years ago, but it's still topical to this day. Back in 2014, the entire discussion was about Ukraine and about what the West was doing in Ukraine. They staged a coup. They want to move weapons in. They want to threaten Russia. And then in this entire wrangling between Russia and the West, one of the things, the moves that were considered, is to actually block Russia from the SWIFT system. So the SWIFT system is the interbanking platform that is settling all monetary transactions. In other words, given that the entire Western system is on the SWIFT system, if you're blocked from the SWIFT system as part of sanctions, what it means is that you can't actually send money or trade with absolutely anybody. You are entirely ring-fenced. So it is as strict and as deadly a sanction as you can come up with. But here, so everybody said, "Ooh, if Russia doesn't play ball, we can always just kick them off the SWIFT system and then basically let them starve." This was the idea. But what Jim Sinclair is saying, watch out, because Russia might be weaker than the US, but it actually has the lever to perfect system judo. And that is that actually Russia is exporting energy, right? And we all need energy. But Russia is exporting it absolutely everywhere. And also Russia is hooked in through this energy pipeline, is hooked in to the petrodollar. Okay, so then you can think, okay, let's ourselves make us independent of Russia's energy and we'll be fine, won't we? No, you will not be fine. And that's because you might detach yourself from the energy dependency of Russia. But what you forgot is that your currency is the petrodollar. Russia is dealing with a lot of volume of trade, around the world that is entirely filled with your currency, the petrodollar. And Jim Sinclair is pointing out, if Russia really wants to screw the US and within 3 days turn it into literally Argentina, all they have to do is to say, if we're kicked off the SWIFT system, we will not just, so at the moment, as a background information, at the moment, Russia is forced to pay and settle all trade in energy with the petrodollar, with the US dollar. It is forced, and this is enforced by the US military. So the US military is willing to kill millions of people to ensure that they continue using the petrodollar. This is partially what happened in Libya. Okay, so these people wanted to move to actually a gold-backed system, and kaboom, before you knew it, the US Army was there, and coups were staged and all sorts of riots were happening. So millions have died to ensure the survival of the petrodollar. So now what's the system judo move? The system judo move is you have two opponents, right? And there's the US and there's Russia. Russia deals in energy. US says, screw you, Russia, we're independent of your energy. Now we can do whatever the hell we like. But what people forgot is that Russia, being smaller than the US, has the system judo move of actually being tied into the petrodollar system. And if they do the one single move, which is to announce that they will not just take the petrodollar, they will accept any other currency, not just gold or silver. They will settle trade in any other currency. What this will mean is that suddenly people will drop the petrodollar because they can use any other currency. They don't have to keep converting absolutely everything into the petrodollar. They can just buy energy straight, not using the dollar. So what happens with all those dollars that are not used? Well, they are coming home, right? Suddenly, all the petrodollar is just being dumped, right? And you just have mayhem. You can literally crash Wall Street because suddenly the kind of tension in the string that was holding the economy together, that is the actual amount of dollars in the system. When suddenly dollars get swamped, it's like this rubber band just expanded and everything just goes flop. Okay, and there's absolutely no way that the US could recover from that. It is systemically impossible. And the reason why it's impossible is precisely because of the size of the petrodollar, of the volume of the petrodollar and the size of the US. It would be absolutely impossible to avert mayhem. All right, so what you would see is massive hyperinflation like that because the petrodollar is just being dumped wherever you are. It is worth nothing. therefore no one can buy anything in the shops anymore, you know. So this is the idea, but it's such a beautiful, beautiful example that if you understand how systems work and how systems are interconnected, even when you're Russia and you're being threatened by the US, you can still have moves open to you that can literally bring your opponent to fall, like catastrophically so, precisely because of his size, you know. So anyway, this is the one example I found for literally nation state system judo. It is a very advanced example, so you have to understand currencies. This is not, you know, something to be just taken in, but on the other hand, once you actually take the time to absorb it, it's precisely these things, these mechanisms, that will explain a lot of the things that are happening in geopolitics, you know. Okay, so this is system judo on the nation state level. But actually, if you go back down to the stuff that matters to us day to day, okay, the currency will matter to us, I can tell you that much. But for now, we're concerned with much more immediate problems. And one immediate problem was something that actually Alfred and I discussed earlier. So when I first got on, I was a bit delayed, and I said, Alfred, I'm so sorry. We had this massive emergency. And by the way, we just put out a new video, an urgent appeal for my colleague, Dr. Millicent Black, that's now on YouTube, that was shot just during the break. But then when I came on, Alfred said to me, oh, don't worry, I've got my own fires to put out right now. And that was basically that somebody deleted one of your most important videos, Alfred, right?
Yes, well, the irony was that today, February 28th, we got a notice on from YouTube that one of our videos with Aldred, that of the March 22nd false flag at Westminster in the UK, in London, had been deleted by YouTube, which gave my channel Exopolitics TV, which has 10 million plus views, 47,000 subscribers. It gave us a strike and said, if we have one more strike, boom, we're gone, because we violated community standards. And we said that the so-called killer in the false flag over Westminster Bridge into the Houses of Parliament, we said that it was a false flag and he wasn't the killer. And we did it on the basis of the video that we put up, a documentary there in which our correspondent, Paolo, who Dr. Horton's aware of as well, they conduct a weekly vigil outside of the Houses of Parliament to call attention to the exact sort of false flag technology that we're talking about now. And they videotaped the alleged killer on a police stretcher where he was allegedly dead, except that he was looking over at our camera and kind of questioning what was going on, almost smiling. And we had him there moving around on the camera, like, you know, kind of kvetching with us, right? And we said, obviously he's not dead. And so that YouTube last night, on February 28th, today, it served us with a notice of violation of community standards, which means censorship standards. It's not community standards, it's censorship standards. In other words, that's YouTube AI, because no thinking individual could do that. Only an AI that had been given instructions that only can be, I mean, they are so much in violation of recognized international legal standards of freedom of expression, the Universal Declaration of Rights, the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which I was a professor of Constitutional Law at the University of Texas Government Department. I mean, I can tell you that. I was a war crimes judge of the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Tribunal. I think I, know enough about that. I was a judge along with Judge Connie Fogel at the 9/11 war crimes. I taught economics law at Yale in the economics department. I mean, give me a break. So what is this AI that has taken over YouTube, and who are the puppet masters behind the AI, or has the AI taken them over so there's no brains left? It's like, who is running this? Now, so I've got my 47,000 hostages, which are my subscribers on YouTube. So we were talking about it. We're going to do some Systems Judo on YouTube. And what I'm going to do is, so we've got to go in there and we've got to rescue the hostages, right? So there's our YouTube, RuTube, which is run by Russia, right? So we'll bring them over to RuTube and we'll start posting it on RuTube. And then we'll also bring it up to BitChute, which is another one. And DTube, I've already posted another thing on DTube about the reptilian president of the US with a reptilian soul who builds a wall, because that's what reptilians do, so he can wall in the human-souled Americans so they can't get out and flee to Mexico, which is actually predicted in a 1982 book called Mujer Dormida Debe de la Luz, which I covered along with covering Jimmy Carter and Pope John Paul II and Giscard d'Estaing to France. I mean, people were talking about this in 1982, and it's happening in 2018. Yeah, yes. Wake up. Okay, and then Gumroad, we're going to put it there, and then Natural News just announced yesterday starting a whole new channel. So we'll just migrate over to Natural News also, and Vimeo, we've already got one there. And then, we'll just announce in small news bulletins on YouTube that you can find all of our news channels, like this one here, we've got to do Systems Judo. We're going to put up a brief news bulletin that you've got to go to RuTube, BitChute, YouTube, Gumroad, Natural News, Vimeo, to really find all, multiple copies of this educational webinar with Dr. Katherine Horton on Systems Judo. So that's what I decided to do after YouTube today, YouTube AI, I'll just say AI, because it's kind of like, it doesn't understand human relationships, right? I mean, who would do this today? Are you like setting up YouTube AI? Is that why you did this? It must have. I mean, what a stupid move, right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, in my
and you were saying, I mean, there were a couple of our colleagues who had 100,000 subscribers, and that you were telling me that got moved, and it's insane.
It is basically, it is insane. It is psychopathic, and the people who are running this and the people who are programming the AI are psychopathic degenerates. So there is the neuroscientist Jim Fallon is his name, and he did brain scans on psychopaths and normal humans, and what you see is really the classical reptilian brain, because the frontal cortex is dead. There's not much going on. These people are crocodiles, they are basically just brain damaged, and it's just absolutely astounding to see that. I mean, the other very, very important channel that got closed down completely, I think last week or just a few days ago, was Richie Allen, the Richie Allen Show on YouTube. I was very annoyed about that, because I had 2 interviews on the Richie Allen Show where I was talking about direct energy weapons, weapon attacks on the UK and the worldwide population. Well, I consider that to be a public interest broadcast. So YouTube does not have really the right to just bar people from accessing this vital information. What has my video got to do with whatever they found offensive, you know, a year later? So I think what we should do is actually take YouTube to court. The only challenge is to find a court that's actually, you know, sane and then not corrupt these days, you know.
Well, we were talking about that earlier, and I've actually now published in 2 different articles, and this is a good time to discuss it here, and I'll publish it here in the article accompanying this, because this is a perfect time to implement what the International Criminal Court was designed for. And the International Criminal Court Treaty and the Rome Statute, which 118 nations around the world have ratified, but not the 4 major war-making nations, which are the United States, Israel, China, and Russia, are the 4 major military, arms-producing, army-making, war-making nations. And, you know, even the UK has signed the International Criminal Court, but those 4 have not signed it. And the 118, I mean, they've signed it, but they have not ratified it. And there's a big difference there, because as soon as you've ratified it, it means that your prosecutors can use your national court to prosecute war crimes, genocide, crimes against humanity, aggressive war. What's going on in Syria now is aggressive war. So everybody there could be prosecuted as genocide, including the arms manufacturers, soldiers, everybody. Let's move war off this planet. It's past history. We're moving into unity consciousness. It's done. Okay, it's a sunset industry. You're going to jail. You're going to community service. Boom. That's it. Done. Toasted. Done and done. Toasted. And so, the way to do this in the original blueprint was not to have one central court in your country, Switzerland, where you are now, right? That wasn't it. It was to decentralize the administration of war crimes justice into 118 countries, where any country that ratified it, they could prosecute war crimes in their national courts. Like in Spain, there was a particular Spanish judge who used that power. Of course, finally they went after him administratively, but for a while he was very, very active. Okay, and so of the 118 nations, and we're on full screen now, but let me exit full screen here, and I'm just going to now go to see where my shades share screen is. Let me just move this over here and get one of the slides.
Oops, sorry. I'm sorry.
Sorry?
Sorry, I think I was being sabotaged here. I had this whole thing mute. Now, as we are speaking, I'm sorry if I turn away. It's basically I'm being attacked with directed energy weapons as we speak on my. And I just have a measuring device, and this is just how.
Yeah, this is exactly they're trying to disrupt this information. This is a war crime in progress. This is a war crime in progress right now, and and these are things that should not be allowed. Because they're a direct violation of the International Criminal Court statute, as well as the 4th Geneva Conventions, which is attacks by nation states on civilians. And it's just happening right here. And so what I'm going to do right now, I just want to get to the right.
As you're bringing it up, can I just
Yeah.
flash up something I've just discovered, if I may share my screen?
Yeah,
because
please.
I basically turned away. I was hoping I could see the Facebook Live broadcast. And then as I was trying to log in as contact@stop007.org, so, sorry, this is in German, but it says that my account has been blocked by by Facebook. And I haven't even been using my Facebook account. I have not been using my Facebook account. Isn't this absolutely amazing?
Yeah, that's a thought crime, right? They say that you either somebody else posted something about you or posted that email address, and so therefore the Facebook AI associated your account with a bad policy or a bad article, so they wiped you out
This is incredible.
Yeah, and so there's a real there's a real hijacking right now of all rights of humans by a predatory AI in league with the administrative, religious, governmental, and economic bankers matrix. Those are the three tools they use: finance, money, banking, religion, and government. Those are the three things that they can control. And so what I'm going to get here is just one slide or two slides actually that I want to show. Let me see. I'll have them open in no time. I've got the slides here, and let's see if I can open them.
In the meantime, as you're opening,
But
because we're now
they're
live
not
onto
open.
another.
Anyway, I tell you what. Since they're not opening them, let's.
I can show something quick in the meantime as you're trying to open them. I was just wanted to suggest maybe, I mean, you have time to open the files and tweak them. And meanwhile, I can share my screen.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I can point,
go ahead.
I can point people to one thing that we were talking about. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong thing. Let me find the right tab. So we were talking earlier about diversifying, and in terms of System Judo, what you were suggesting. I mean, by now I sent out a set of tweets when Richie Allen's channel got deleted. I created the hashtag #FYouTube because I think this is our whole approach. I think that we should take, and we should just migrate to other platforms. And actually, it will be also teaching us something about basically monopolies and economy, because we have let YouTube monopolize the entire space, and it has actually been eating up smaller startups and driving them out of the market. And we have let YouTube do that by not supporting fringe platforms. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which links we're sharing, where they're being hosted. Nevertheless, we went for YouTube. So I had I had suggested changing to our YouTube, which is the Russian version here. And one of the things I wanted to do quickly, now that we're actually on the topic, is actually draw people to one particular detail. So this is our YouTube. It looks virtually identical to YouTube, apart from the fact that it's in Russian. But if you have Google, if you use Google Chrome and you just hit translate, I was amazed how the good AI of Google actually translated the Russian within seconds into English. So in the end, I can actually read the page, but I invite people to translate the page and go to info and then basically terms of use. And I want to draw you and look at this. So the AI is just, as you're scrolling down, it's, it's changing from Russian immediately into English. So this AI is amazing, very helpful AI. But I want to draw your attention to one particular clause, which was, hang on, let me just remind myself. Yes, 514. So if you go down into the terms and conditions, this is something that blew my mind on our YouTube. And immediately I thought, oh yes, the evil Russians. And then I thought, hang on, they are just writing it. But it was actually YouTube that deleted Richie Allen's channel. So what's going on? So if you look at clause 514, it says in the English translation, the administration also has the right to replace or delete words and expressions that may be considered offensive or violate the rights of third parties, and also make other changes or additions to the materials and information solely for the purpose of bringing them in line with the current legislation of the Russian Federation. So this is interesting because in the terms and conditions, they are telling you that they don't just have the right to block you, they have the right to replace words, all right, and add material, additions to the material.
Yeah, I just wanted to state that a live feed of this webinar right now is playing in a group on Facebook called Vladimir Putin, the People's Liberator. And I actually, I've been a member of that forum for a whole number of years, and I've actually posted a live feed of this webinar in that Facebook group. So this is the acid test as to whether it's, whether everybody's for real. Everybody can walk the walk, talk the talk, but are they going to walk the walk of allowing us to broadcast? I can say that in 1987 with my co-host Mary Houston on WBAI, with my co-partners Gospel Radio in Moscow, we broadcast the first live radio program between the Soviet Union and Russia and the United States in history. That was broadcast over all 11 time zones of Russia, the Soviet Union, via Gospel Radio, and over the entire United States via the NPR satellite. I used it with my computer, and I rented for $25 one transponder of the NPR satellite through WBAI. Okay, so let's see if everybody's willing to walk the walk and we don't get bumped off of RooTube like they did on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm so glad you posted it to Russian speakers, because what I really want to invite them to, I'm just using crappy Google Translate. So Google Chrome's amazingly, I did manage to read the terms and conditions, and I don't speak a word of Russian, but I asked the Russian speakers to actually go to the Russian version of clause 514 here under info, and then terms of use, and then go to clause 514. Oops, this thing doesn't go away anymore. And then read this condition about the administration having the right to replace words. Delete words, never mind about deleting words. We know that they can do that. What they have done in some YouTube videos I've seen is that they literally block out, they just mute certain words. But now when it's about replacing words, this is insidious, because they do have, I always mean the intelligence agencies, they have voice morphing technology so that they can imitate anybody's sound to speak the words they would speak in exactly the sort of tone of voice. And then the other thing that the intelligence agencies have, which is a new bit of software that was, I have to look up the exact advert, but it was already advertised, and I think it's for commercial use. And it's about making images, modifying images live as they're being filmed, and making objects disappear and reappear in a live feed. So in principle, you can have a cameraman filming from a war zone, or maybe it isn't a war zone, maybe it's just a desert in Texas, and you can just, see bombs exploding, but it's just been CGI'd in. Or similarly, you will see a war and there are all these civilian deaths and the bodies are being edited out. And the key is that this can be done live now. And the company did a little demonstration where they had a live feed from a camera filming an object with, a table with several objects, and they made the objects disappear and reappear in real time. So we now have the technology to modify video and by the sounds of it, RooTube is already positioning themselves legally such that they reserve the right to actually use that. So even if we're doing a live feed, Alfred, maybe they will start, they reserve the right to put words into our mouth that we have never said, or take words out or modify them. And meanwhile, maybe change the background, or put images in. So these clauses should be read, but here in the West, the brainwash being entirely about Russia being also evil, I would like to point out that most likely YouTube and RooTube, given that they look pretty identical, are possibly at the very top owned by the same economic cartel. That's doing the same nonsense everywhere. And we should do System Judo, and we should say, we have looked at the Russian arm of this cartel, and they have put in this curious little clause. Now let's go back to the American arm or the European arm of YouTube and read the clauses even more carefully with this, thing in mind, to look specifically for the right to modify content.
Well, we have the testimony of one of my colleagues, Dr. Lambremont Webre, PhD, who said that when she was a scientist at Livermore National Laboratory in the 70s, 80s, and that's one of the most secure laboratories, scientific laboratories, or was then, because of their nuclear work. She learned that there were 2 Soviet generals at the laboratory bringing all the security codes and being given all the national security codes for how to turn the United States into the Soviet Union, and how to Sovietize the United States. And she was told that they were planning on, the long-term plan was to switch the 2 countries, was to make the United States the Soviet Union and the Soviet Union the United States, and that is a strategic thing that's happening now, and that transition indeed is undergoing and started several decades ago. And Dr. Lambremont Webre is a whistleblower, and we have not been able to do an interview with her for the last 18 months because every time that we start to plan one or even do one with she and her partner, Laurence Battis, who is a former U.S. Naval SEAL, they are both hit with directed energy weapons where they have to take cover, and because they're in extreme pain, and we can't even get the electronic equipment going to do the interviews because they don't want, whoever's operating those systems do not want those facts known and understood, and they have such insight into the takeover of the United States that's occurring now. They're in the Bay Area and nationwide now, that, by other countries and by corporations like Google, that they don't want this known. And so Dr. Lambremont Webre and I have been physically unable to do these interviews because of the directed energy weapons that are beamed at her every time that we plan one. Do you have any comment on that?
Yes, I do actually, because as you were speaking, I brought up a presentation I made, because I think the most incredible thing that you have reported is that during the Cold War phase, Russian generals would have been in the US and being given access to absolutely, everything, and preparing to take over for the US. And that is precisely that's the conclusion I reached, although I don't have the kind of, access that Dr. Moray has. What I had was literally just, hey, systems analysis, right? So that's what I play around with. And actually on this topic, I can show you how I reached exactly the same conclusion, that this is what's going to happen. And this is a little presentation that I did. I'm just going to show three slides that are super easy to understand. I was explaining the spread. So this is a presentation about so-called cartel signaling, okay? So just to give you it's about cartel signaling and the spread of global organized crime around the world. And I explain what cartel signaling is. It's basically mafia gangster talk, kind of like, and I give the example of double Dutch being the gangster talk of the pirates, right, of the empire of the Dutch. And there's Cockney rhyming slang in London being associated with the crime cartel of the City of London Corporation. And then I draw people's attention to the typical mafia symbols, like the all-seeing eye, the pentagram, devil's horn, blah, blah, blah. And then I pick out the pentagram. And, there's other mafia symbols throughout the ages. But then I use the pentagram and I map out the spread of organized crime around the world using just the pentagram. And I go through all the national flags that have the satanic pentagram in them. For example, the satanic pentagram in the old Soviet Union flag, or communist Romania, there it is, hidden away, or the communist-controlled China. China today has 5 pentagrams. And then Vietnam, and I go through literally every single country that has a satanic pentagram. I'm going to speed up now here. You can see it. Singapore is, basically Pac-Man swallowing 5 pentagrams in the shape of a pentagram. I mean, probably Singapore can't get any more satanic, even if they wanted to. And I go through every country in the world that has these satanic pentagrams and the meaning of it. But then look at the United States. It has 50 pentagrams. There's 50 satanic states. And the question is, when you have the US flag with the 50 pentagrams, and you have, back in the Cold War, you would have had, let me go back to the beginning, the communist, the first, okay, this is before the Second World War and during the Second World War. But then you have China, and you had the Soviet Union with the same pentagram. The question is, was that the only star graphic designer that existed in the world? Or is there something else going on? And when you actually map it, and this presentation, it goes on and on and on. It's not just, these countries that might be called the axis of evil by some people. It's also the US, right? And it's also the European Union, the 12 satanic states of Europe. So when you have this in mind, and you see that the same emblem has been going, was present on both countries, the Soviet Union and the US had these satanic stars, there must be a satanic umbrella above them that had united them long ago, even before the Cold War. So in other words, the entire Second World War was staged. There's evidence for that, from finance, that it was actually financed by Anglo-Saxon banks and actually coordinated out of Switzerland. And then you think, okay, so if the Second World War was staged, and then during the Cold War, both US and the Soviet Union had basically the same logo. You know what this is, the satanic pentagram? It's a corporate logo for satanic organization. It's their corporate logo. Okay, so when both had the same corporate logo, they were part of the same corporation. Okay, so they were, Russia and the US are different local branches of the same corporation. So what you're now telling me, translating it to the conclusion I reached from systems analysis, is that Dr. Murray saw employees from branch office of the corporation from Russia go to the branch office of the same corporation in the US and already set into motion and prepare the next management change, the next business transition that was planned long ago. Okay, so this is how I think, and everything that you said makes perfect sense to me. Absolutely. And then when you have these things, basically the way I see it is that what we're faced with is this satanic corporation, and then people can wonder which corporation that might be. But this satanic corporation is executing business plans, and these business plans are basically asset stripping, because this corporation lives off fraud, of racketeering, of extortion, of murder, because it's organized crime. It's the mafia. It's the staple business of the mafia. So when you have communism and you have absolutely exploited the country to the last bit, and you have the rich US, what are you going to do? You want to keep harvesting the countries. You're just going to seesaw, right? Once the US is rich and you've really sucked Russia dry, which, by the way, used to be actually comparatively quite, rich, the Western part, very advanced, high culture. But now we're just like, oh, Russia, oh gosh, Russia, St. Petersburg, Moscow used to be just part of the same, elite circuit. So they've sucked those dry. They pushed up the US, but now the US is just one big fat goose ready for the plucking, right? So you're just going to take that down and you're going to push this up. And what Dr. Murray is describing is this basically asset stripping harvesting cycle that is going to be a seesaw like that. So it makes perfect sense to me, and look at what we've just done, Alfred. They blocked Dr. Murray and they didn't, reckon with me coming on and saying the same thing. So in your face, people.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Yeah, that makes sense. That truly makes sense.
Yeah, and there are also, other people, much wiser, much more learned people than me, who have pointed into a similar direction. One guy I like a lot, called, his real name was, I think, Edward Hull, and he was called Christopher Story. That was his pen name. And he has got an excellent, YouTube presentation by him, Christopher Story. And it's basically the, what was that called? I think he's got several. One of them is called the Perestroika Deception. But the other one is talking about the revolution and the satanic revolution, and why, the entire revolution in Russia was actually a satanic enterprise. Absolutely brilliant guy. And he writes beautifully. So I just encourage everybody to buy every book by him. And the other thing was,
people can go to our website, exopolitics.com, and go to the index there, and you can download a free PDF of Christopher Story's The New Underworld Order.
Yes, exactly.
Of his book, and that's a tour de force. That is a tour de force. And that goes into the plans for the railroad cars from the FEMA camps of the Americans that would go up through Alaska over into Russia, and the FEMA camps would be in Siberia. And during 2015, when they deployed the nationwide AI called Jade Helm. And notice that this past week, they made the president of China president for life, Jade Helm. And that is when they started talking about, at that time, the Walmarts actually being the intake for the for the FEMA camps, which are mainly underground, and the transportation systems to the FEMA camps are underground, are actually tunnels that have been built underground bases. And there are whistleblowers that I've heard at conferences and that are on the internet that talk about the underground prison bases and the underground cities and the underground transportation systems, which are extensive, and the deep underground military bases, which I can testify personally. I have had interaction with people that have been extensively in the underground military bases, including when I was at SRI in the 1970s. So, I mean, they do exist, and a large part of the military establishment, as well as the reptilian extraterrestrial establishment, is underground.
This is just, I mean, the underground bunkers is also where a lot of the child abuse victims are being held. They're also abused and held at hospitals, but also in children's homes, but also a lot of them in these underground military bases.
Exactly. So this is why, to get back to the and I can't seem to open it here, but the war crime strategy is that one can go to these 118 to the national courts, and one can do what's called forum shopping. There are 118 countries here that it must be something with a computer that I just can't open the file, but I will include this as part of the article in that accompanies this webinar. The national courts in these countries. Oh, here we go. I got one slide, and so what I'll do is I'll just this is let me just put this over to share screen, and I'm going to do that. So then I've got slide 24, and I'll share screen here. And so I think you can see here a slide, correct? You can?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Okay, good. So it says the 118 nations that have ratified the treaty of the International Criminal Court. And this is the second of two slides. So it goes from country number 61 to Latvia to country number 118, Zambia. So, you know, you've got a lot of countries there that one could approach. Mexico.
Is Switzerland on the list? As the heart of evil?
Switzerland is number 106.
Yeah.
Sweden. You know, you've got Mexico, you've got Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Panama, Peru, Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Republic of Korea. Now that's South Korea. You've got St. Kitts, St. Lucia, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Sweden, Macedonia, Trinidad, Tunisia, Uganda, United Kingdom, Tanzania, Uruguay, Venezuela, Zambia. So each of these nations that have ratified the treaty can prosecute and enforce the International Criminal Court Treaty. That's how Chile got General Pinochet, who was the fascist dictator. Thatcher, Prime Minister Thatcher, was giving protection to the war criminal General Pinochet in Britain, and Chile, which is a signatory of the and a ratifier of the International Criminal Court, sued under the ICC and was able to extricate him because the UK is a signatory of the International Criminal Court. So this is war crimes. So they got him as a war criminal. And that's why the United States, Israel, China, and Russia don't sign, because they have secret treaties with the reptilians that supersede them. Do you see what I'm saying? Because
Yeah,
they're all part of the satanic. They're the lead countries in the satanic mafia. You follow?
yeah, absolutely.
They have the super secret treaties.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So I think that today we've put together the satanic mafia in the flags and everything with your data, and with this data of the 118 nations of the International Criminal Court, that we the people can go and start going to the national courts here and start really seeking prosecution, trial, and conviction of the leading members of this banking cartels. It's banking, finance, money, religion, and government. Those are the three areas.
Yeah.
So in those three areas is where they're hiding the war criminals, and those are three areas in which to deploy the national courts of the 118 nations that are clean and ready to move forward of the International Criminal Court. That's what has to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is highly relevant to the victims that I'm trying to support, because I'm trying to assist people in preparing court cases against the intelligence agencies. So we are actually, I always put across the point that we have to morph cases, because the perpetrators will have been the same, who are committing child abuse, child ritual sacrifice, because it's part of the satanic system, the directed energy weapon attacks. And when you get, for example, senior intel agents, so heads of secret services, they are, and in the UK it has already been shown, it has already been published in mainstream media, so people can look it up, that heads of MI5 and MI6 were deeply involved with the child abuse and also with the disappearance and presumably murder of children, So when we have senior intelligence agents, they will be involved in the child abuse, the murder of children, and they will also be involved in the deployment of directed energy weapons against the civilian population. So when we have victim testimonies testifying against the same person, or victim cases actually leading to the same perpetrators, I think one should combine these cases and actually go after these criminals,
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that what we're having here is, in the webinar, is a demonstration of systems judo. So could you step back and just talk about how we're demonstrating how systems judo could be carried out by what we've just talked about?
Yes, I mean, first of all, the system judo that's that this is standing for. Although I have to warn you, I think there are some more system judo moves required to actually make the courts work the way we want to work. And I actually have if depending on how much time we have, I do have.
No. From our end, we have no time limits. I realize that it's very late in Switzerland right now.
Oh, It's okay. I have, one of the advantages that this is actually an advantage. I'm trying to take any time of any type of torture and mutilation to my advantage. That's the only thing I can do. So the system judo that they just trick themselves with is I've got chips on my head that I've measured, and there's a YouTube video out there where I measure myself with a bug detector. And when they turn these chips on, I can't go to sleep. So they were trying to sleep deprive me. And over the last couple of days, they've turned me nocturnal. So I basically went to bed at 7 a.m., at 8 a.m. in the morning and slept until the afternoon. But the good thing is, for me, it's now just the early afternoon. So, hey. Yeah, and now they wish they hadn't done this, because otherwise I would have folded by now. But actually, to answer your question, in that case, if you have maybe 5 to 10 minutes, I think the last few steps that are missing, I think then we would have a full picture. Because what we actually have seen here is, this international criminal court system is a decentralized system, and it is always much more powerful and much more resilient than a centralized system. And that's because centralized systems can easily be captured. And I will say a few more words about that. But once they are captured by criminals or psychopaths, a system cannot recover itself. Because when the top positions are basically held by criminals, these criminals would have to sack themselves for the system to recover. Now, that's not going to happen. And this is why when you have the top of the military being a psychopath or a criminal, that is deadly, because, he's just going to kill everybody else using the army before he is going to give up his own post. So once you reach this state of deep capture, it is absolutely impossible for the system to recover. And most of these pyramid organizations we have are already in deep capture, which means the top is already taken, entirely controlled by organized crime. But you can cycle out a system out of deep capture if you move from a centralized system to a decentralized system. And that is the quickest way to cycle it. Because once you have a decentralized system, you're not just relying on the few potentially bought or blackmailed and controlled individuals. You are relying on an entire crowd of people, which is much, much harder to actually control. I mean, frankly, the Bar Association has done its bit to actually try to control as many lawyers as there are, on planet Earth. But still, I have stood in front of honest judges, myself. And those are judges where I didn't have any reason to believe that they were corrupt in any way. So they do exist, and they are worth gold, But now the question is, so we have this decentralized system, and we have all these countries that can actually host a court, or the national courts can be used to prosecute crimes against humanity, presumably, and war crimes. And the entire attacks with directed energy weapons, the non-consensual implanting, the hooking people up to brain-computer interfaces, and all this that is part of the takeover of the cartel and the enslavement of humanity, all of this can now actually be dealt with in the national courts. And that is worth gold, because if you say, okay, let's say Belgium is, that's hosting NATO, that's hosting the European Parliament, forget it, it's like one big, deep captured corruption fest. If you think like that, then go somewhere else, go to Finland, and you can do the same thing. This is how I'm reading it. So that's already a good thing, because it allows the entire system to, if the bottleneck is captured, to flow elsewhere and then repair itself. Because frankly, people just want to move on, and they want to clear out the corruption and get on with their lives instead of just wasting time, But the real question, Alfred, is once one is standing in front of a judge, what can one do when this guy is entirely bought? Because I did have, 2 or 1.5, no, I think 2 honest judges, but the third one threw out my case and called it frivolous or vexatious, despite the fact that I told him about the fact that I received a death threat and was nearly killed on the motorway, 3 days later. So I had lots of, I didn't have all the evidence, but he blocked my request for an extension of time. And also the other things that happened, the details of the court case didn't really, increase my confidence in the third judge I had, So what to do if one has reasons to believe that a judge is maybe corrupt or maybe put under pressure by these big organizations? like the intelligence agencies. And this is a very real question, especially here in Switzerland. You know, Alfred, I'm not sure if you know, but here in Switzerland, we have one man called Gerhard Ulrich, and he is a pioneer. He is a total pioneer in system recapture, because this man has mapped out the judges of the European Courts of Human Rights and the Swiss judges, and he has got a list of, I think, 1,500 judges, most of which are basically have been flagged for suspicion of corruption or collusion or conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. So this man has accumulated a huge database of past cases with concerns raised. And what he actually essentially has done is he has mapped out the judicial system and has already flagged potentially corrupt judges. Okay. So that is a really big thing. And I think one of the problems that victims always have is that the court system as it currently stands is so incredibly complex. I mean, there was a Supreme Court judge, Lord Toulson, in the UK, on record, giving a talk saying how the laws in social security and the entire social benefits system in the UK are so complex that in a court of law, neither the two barristers nor the judges present could actually work out what the social benefits entitlement of one of the claimants was. It was absolutely impossible to work out because the laws were so higgledy-piggledy complex, you know. So this is real complexity in the legal system as it currently is. So in this jungle, thick forest of laws, there's always the chance to actually weasel out and then go through loopholes and stuff like that. So and that is just a law. And then if you combine that with potentially bought or blackmailed or corrupt judges, we can have court cases, but what is going to guarantee that we'll actually end up with justice? I mean, as they say, son, this isn't, this is a court of law, not a court of justice, So the real question is, and if I may, I don't know, can I share my screen, Alfred? Because I wanted to show.
Yeah, sure. Let me.
Because one of the things I wanted to show is, let's see, a brief presentation that I gave at one of these, one of the events organized. Where is it? Yes, here, by an event organized by Gerhard Ulrich, and he asked me to give a brief presentation about systems principles. So I gave a short presentation about what deep capture actually is in a system and how one can recapture a system. And I think this is exactly the program we would have to run if you want to ensure that these international criminal courts actually work the way they are intended. So what I started with is a simple model of a pyramid organization. So you can see the green dots are basically people. The green dot at the top is the boss of the organization. The people below that are maybe the heads of the departments. And then you've got the team leaders and the employees. And the vertical bars are indicating the separation between departments. Okay, so you might have, I don't know what, the sales department, the R&D department, manufacturing, whatever. A typical organization. But now it is a reality that psychopaths are 1% of our population. So what's the effect of psychopaths on a system? So imagine, you hire psychopaths at the bottom, and the key thing about the psychopaths is that they are always striving for more and more power. So the psychopath will want to climb the ranks and will do anything to get to more power. So as soon as you have a psychopath actually being promoted to team leader, he will exert his influence, and these people can be highly manipulative, sometimes also very charming, and they will take over their team. The team will be actually acting according to the principles, sometimes very ruthless principles of the psychopath. These people are ruthlessly efficient, right? Because they have no conscience. So you already have, an entire department captured. But as the psychopath is striving for more and more power in the competition against normal people, right? Non-psychopaths, they mostly win out because they are just so ruthless. They don't have a problem to stab somebody in the back. So as a senior psychopath moves to become the head of department, maybe his underling might become the team leader, and then they would hire a new entry person. That's the new green little dot at the bottom where the arrow is. And this little person would enter the department. Now, when a person comes into a team that was formerly run by a psychopath, these psychopathic traits will remain because the new team leader, who is still under control of the boss, one up, will actually propagate his traits. He will be forced to. So he will be exerting pressure on this new employee, and they will force him to actually, accept the principles, or rather lack thereof, of the team. So bit by bit, this is how psychopaths can then exert their pressure on entire companies. And when a psychopath has taken over a company and has literally modified the corporate culture like that, you have something that's in systems analysis is called domain formation. So people who have studied physics will find domain formation in phase transitions. When spins flip, or you have magnetic materials becoming non-magnetic or being remagnetized, you have domain formation. And for the physicists out there, it's really important to realize that phase transitions is exactly the type of mathematics you should be using here to understand these organizations. So we have a certain domain that's entirely captured by psychopaths, okay? And then the domain on the left-hand side will be have a toxic culture. The domain on the right-hand side will be healthy, okay? But then when you have these two domains, right, the question is, how do you actually recapture an organization like that? And by the way, this is exactly what's going to happen in the courts. You might have, say, the family courts, where it's captured by psychopaths. They want the children, they want to abuse them, they want to traffic them, they want to take them away from the parents. So eventually, bit by bit, the family courts might be just as captured as the left-hand side here, whereas you have maybe some other part of the law that's comparatively healthy. I don't know what that might possibly be these days. I don't know, perhaps landlords and I don't know what, some subset of contract law. Anyway, you get the idea. So the question now is, once you have a captured organization, what to do? Because there's a level up from this that's even more dangerous, and that's deep capture. As soon as, psychopaths move into the top layers and actually take over the top, that is called deep capture. And deep capture is deadly for an organization for the reasons I explained. An organization cannot recover by their own energy or by their own mechanisms anymore. The bosses would have to sack themselves. So that's not going to happen. So, and this effect of psychopaths moving into higher echelons, if you read the text at the bottom of the slide, has already been observed, because as far as I'm aware, 1% is the concentration of psychopaths in the general population. But when you have CEOs, it's already sixfold. Frankly, I think this is a massive underestimation. But anyway, you get the idea. You have an enrichment, of psychopaths. And actually, what a colleague, Dr. Paul Marco, who passed away on the 6th of February, unfortunately, he was the founder of our Technocrime Fighters Forum, the public forum of the Joint Investigation Team. So my colleague, Dr. Paul Marco, used to call pyramid organizations psychopath magnets, exactly for this reason, that as soon as you have a pyramid organization, by definition, you will have psychopaths migrating to the top. So if you've got organizations that are particularly old or particularly wide, so particularly big, you basically suck the psychopaths from the lower echelons into the top. That's where they all want to be and control everybody else. So pyramid organization is always a psychopath magnet. But it is also a magnet for organized crime. And organized crime can buy themselves in and control organizations beautifully, either sell insider information, or whatever they want to do. So anyway, what you basically have is, if you've got a pyramid organization, they are psychopath magnets and they are criminal magnets, because both criminals and psychopaths will want to be at the top. Okay, so this is and the same thing will happen with the court system, because this scheme, this organigram, applies to absolutely every organization out there. So when you have this happen in the court system, I predict that what's going to happen with the International Criminal Court is that the cartel is going to buy the lead judges, you know, or the cartel will buy a critical mass of judges, you know. If there are 3 judges, they will try to buy 2, you know, and so on. If there are 5 judges, they're going to buy 3 and so on. So what the hell are we going to do? You know, is the cartel always going to win? And yes, the cartel's always going to win if you look at organizations like this, okay? But then what to do? Well, what we have to do is to recapture the systems, okay? So we have to use systems analysis principles to recapture the system. And the first step in systems analysis is if you want to recapture something like this, okay, and you have the organization, a captured organization like that, then you have totally corrupt departments, say family courts. You've got partially corrupt areas, say, I don't know what, you know, public contract or, you know, commercial law. And then you've got other areas that are less corrupt. You have to look at it as a system. You have to realize that there will be domains. So the first thing that you don't do is you don't just give up and you cower like in the martial martial arts video. You don't say, oh my God, these are going to be corrupt judges, we just have to bear them. No, you lunge at them, all right? And you basically, if you're attacked by them, you go for them. That's step number 1. So you don't just think, oh, you know, let's throw our hands into the air, because by definition, it will always be domains. There will always be individual honest judges. They need your help. And there might be entire departments that are perfectly fine. So if you don't use these courts, you're an idiot because you missed out on your chance, you know, to get whatever compensation or you get justice. So the way to look at it is to think, okay, this is a system and it might seem powerful, but it's tiny. It's tiny in terms of compared to the number of people in the population. Any court system is. It is just negligible. So step number 1 is, first of all, be aware how many people, these pink dots are us. We are outside the court system. So be aware how many of us there are against them, how small the system is, and then turn this entire system upside down and think, okay, we're the people, we're the users of the court. We are accessing the court. We're not the slaves of the court. We're the users of the court. And our first point of entry is here. The front are always the judges who you will meet in court. And then above the judges, there are maybe other people, you know, maybe the people who run the courts, and beyond them, some government officials or whoever. And then at the very bottom, you've got organized crime, you know, for sure. But anyway, you start with the individual judges. And when you want to recapture the system, so this is what a normal court system would look like, right? Every one of us, we're approaching we land in front of some random judge, and every judge here is working through these little pink dots, you know, being thrown at a judge, these little cases. Okay, so what do we do? Because some of us will be lucky, we'll get a decent judge. Some of us will be royally screwed, you know, when we get a black, you know, one of these black judges, these black horses. Okay, so what we do, you know, first of all, you realize that every single judge is got pressure from 2 sides. Number 1 is massive pressure from the boss. Oops, sorry. Massive pressure from the boss. That's very heavy, so very thick arrow. And then really tiny, tiny bits of pressure from individual cases that no one knows about. So in this scenario, every judge is going to think, well, I don't really want to lose my pension, nor do I want to suffer for the rest of my career in this, you know, so they will give in to the pressure from above. If you consider it to be pressure from above, you've lost. If you consider it pressure from below, you're already on to winning, because then if you realize that this is pressure from below, holding them up, what you have to do is you just have to make the arrow, the pressure bearing down on one judge, to be bigger than the pressure holding them up. Okay, so what you do is you try to apply massive pressure at an individual judge, because there is no way he's going to face that amount of pressure just because his boss is a bit, you know, sitting in his neck, you know, nagging. No way. So what's going to happen is as soon as you apply massive pressure to an individual judge, this could be publicity, could be many other things, please, no violence, but publicity is a good one. Well, you know, a judge who receives massive publicity thinks, okay, I can either give in to that corrupt bastard who I really want to, you know, leave anyway, or I will just give in to publicity, hold up my hands and say, sorry, you know, I couldn't embarrass the court. I just had to decide that way. You know, I had to be honest. And voila, you have already recaptured a judge. When that's recaptured, the pressure is automatically applied back, right? Because basically the pressure is now applied to these other people who then have to come up with something else, you know? And then you continue applying the pressure until the middle manager folds and pushes all the pressure that he received back up the chain. And you have to realize that the further up, or rather in this scenario, the further down you go, the fewer people there are, okay? So you suddenly have a massive tower of a lot of judges not being willing to expose themselves to massive publicity, and you suddenly see this thing like crack, it's crashing in. You know, the crushing pressure from above cracks the system, okay? And then you continue applying massive pressure to absolutely every single corrupt judge until bit by bit, you are recapturing the system. So what is needed is very simple. You have to think in terms of systems, and you have to apply massive pressure to individual judges. Not massive pressure to just the system and keep complaining about the judicial system being corrupt. No, try to complain about Judge so-and-so being corrupt and see what effect that has, you know, because also, especially when you have a corrupt system, for example, like one like this here, like these corrupt judges here, some of them would be willing to put their own mother into the microwave for $5. They're not going to give a damn about each other. They're not going to stick up for each other because they're corrupt, you see. So you've already won. Because as soon as you apply pressure to one, he's going to fold. So he just wants to save his own skin and his own pension fund, and that's it, you know. So really, number one is you have to work together. And the key is you have to realize you have to work together across interests. So if somebody has taken your children away, you have to care about the other people who are appearing before the same judge who maybe complain about directed energy weapon attacks, you know, and stuff like that. So it's about working together across interests. So that already takes a higher brain function, because we suddenly have to start being interested, not just in our own plight, but in that of another person. Okay, and voila, we already bring humanity together. So you also have to always focus action against individuals, and you have to keep track of these individuals. You also have to report publicly, because as soon as you report publicly, you recruit, you know, people who are interested in your case. Okay, and then I would recommend that you start building a database like Gerhard Ulrich. You build a database of corrupt individuals, you know. But the other thing, the flip side of the coin that Gerhard Ulrich has, he doesn't just have a database of corrupt judges. He has a database of good judges, okay? And that's something you have to take care of as well, because every single good judge is worth gold. You know, that's your toehold in the system. So what you also have to do is protect the good guys, because sometimes good judges are being sacked, they are being bullied out, they are also being attacked with directed energy weapons, right? And you have to protect them. So this means that, you know, if something happens to your good judges, you have to go nuts, just like you would do if something happened to one of the claimants or defendants in a court case. And then finally, you have to really have persistence, and you have to follow the entire system long term, because systems have a different time scale. They have a different life cycle, and this can be decades. So you have to make it your lifestyle, that you care about the health of our systems, that you care about the health of the judicial system, for example. You know, I mean, it's easy for me to say because I spent a year watching the UK Supreme Court through their live stream and analyzing absolutely everything they did. Not everybody has the, you know, the research grant and the actual, you know, mental capacity and frankly stamina to stay awake to do that. But nevertheless, this is something we have to do. If we care about justice, we have to recapture our systems. They are our systems. We're the court users, you know, not the cartel. So this is my take on it. But then much more practically, what is needed? What is needed, I think, is first of all, what some of us are doing naturally, is to pool information. So pool information across interests. So for example, I'm representing or fighting for the victims of directed energy weapons, but I keep preaching that we have to care about child abuse victims. Okay, so this is extremely important. We have to put all the information together. You know, we have to have individual campaigns, and I think we also have to learn how to remove corrupt judges. You know, there must be an administrative procedure, because I don't think that the common law, you know, jurisdictions are the very first time in their millennia-old history up against, you know, the existence of corrupt judges. So there must be some sort of mechanism, and we have to all be aware what the administrative procedure is. But then also, we all have to learn how to report publicly, how to use Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. And voila, here we are exactly at the problems we've raised in the beginning, because YouTube channels get deleted and Facebook accounts like mine, as I've just discovered today, get shut down. So we don't just have to care about the health of our judicial systems, we have to care about the health of our communication platforms. So when Richie Allen's YouTube channel gets deleted, you have to go really angry. You have to start complaining. And when my Facebook channel gets, okay, I haven't posted very much, so, you know, people will not get upset. But when this keeps happening, you have to start complaining about it, you know? So stuff like Twitter shadow banning, that's something I've been complaining and campaigning against. We all have to take that seriously, you know, because these are our systems. We use them. At the moment, we're led to believe, oh, we should just load our data into that and use it for free. That's why it's for free people, because these people use our data, you know. They make money off our data. That's why they give us all this infrastructure for free. But we should say, no, hang on a second. I think you're making so much money off my data just from advertising. You can actually guarantee a good service here if you wanted to. So then that's it, you know, this is it. So I would say, follow what Gerhard Ulrich does, make a database of corrupt individuals, and also protect your good guys. Really, with letters, I think, I don't know, Alfred, what do you think? But I really think that if a judge gets letters of praise, it's probably just as effective, you know, just as good as ammo as if a judge gets letters of complaint, you know?
Yeah, these are very, i.e. become a sort of a proactive. So this is saying, this is our instructions to how to fight inside the system. Yeah, and so you're coming from that response to the systems judo. Yeah, I can see that, and so it's boy, that's a tall order. You just laid a tall order on people, and I can see how it's a tall order that you follow in your own life, because you are involved in so many different aspects, you know, both online, face to face, you know, it's talk the talk, walk the walk. That's
Yes.
that's the big difference. So where does this go from here? How does this go? You know, we're just coming off of, let's say, today is the last day of February, you know, and tomorrow's March 1st. There's an old saying, March is in like a lion, out like a lamb. So let's kind of use that to our that advantage, where we're going to create some kind of positive explosion to where the matrix reality has tried to impose this blitz on us of you know, freedom of speech, the freedom of speech kind of directed energy weapon shut down, you know, shut down. I don't know what you would call it, you know.
Absolutely.
We'd have to coin some kind of, you know, phrase of it, which I think is part of their secret strategy, because they actually did start Google AdSense, to where people from everything, where they monetized videos to such an extent that you know, cute cat videos and rock bands were making $100,000 a year, off of Google AdSense. And if you had a good Truth channel going, you could make $1,500 a month off of your Truth channel, right? I mean, now you're down to like $28 a month off your Truth channel, basically. So, in a way, I think that they've been carrying out a kind of a pump and dump operation against us. I think it's much more sophisticated, they, over the last couple of years. I think Google is diabolical. It's more of a diabolical entity than people really want to admit. Their strategies are entirely diabolical. And so the issue is to really expose that, and then to move forward with the strategies of educating our audience, which you are doing now, and moving our audiences in cyberspace and in community video to join us, so that we really are one, and to go into community-owned and operated video outlets, and to kind of implode YouTube and to implode Google. I used to say that Google was part of the black goo of the predatory AI. That was my kind of response to Google.
I think you're probably spot on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, I've got so many ideas, because you know what I think what most people watching this don't realize, but what I feel right now is my head is being hammered with directed energy weapons. So when I pull faces, it's not because I'm, it's because I'm actually in pain. So
I'm sorry.
So one of the things that people don't realize is that we're appearing here looking, in my case less so, but more or less kind of normal and decent. But actually, there's a hot active shooting war right now. This hot active shooting war is happening here in Zurich. I'm being machine gunned as I'm trying to reach out to other people and repair our systems. I'm being machine gunned by my own neighbors, and many other horrific things are happening. I receive emails every day from people who are being poisoned in their own homes. People break in, they get poison darts shot at them. I received a badge just before Christmas in my neck, and basically we have a hot active war happening right now, and most people are blissfully unaware who is warring on us, what the hell to do, how they're being attacked, and how we're going to save our lives and how we're going to recover. So step number one in creating this explosion is for everybody who's listening to me and who's actually still has the ability to hear me over the internet, right? Please understand this is an emergency broadcast, okay? I am dying. I am actually dying. I have received such a radiation dose by now that I don't think I'll make it past the next 5 years, okay? So this is an active shooting war. I might be assassinated beforehand, I don't know, but I don't expect to live longer than the next 5 years, tops. So this is reality, people. I'm in Zurich. I'm not in Iraq or Afghanistan. I'm in Zurich, okay? My colleague, Melanie Richan, is being just as mutilated to death in Brussels as we speak. This is Brussels, okay? Not Basra. All right, so you have to understand that the war is now engulfing you. My other colleagues are in Boston and in Columbia, Tennessee, and in Maryland. So these are all places where there's an active hot and shooting war. So step number one is realize that this is true and get off your rear sides, people. right now. You know, we will not win this war by just being on YouTube all the time, although I am on YouTube a lot. So that's step number one. We have to realize that we have to translate it into real life actions, you know. And then I think step number two is to realize that all the campaigners and everybody who's gone before us, and many of them are already dead or murdered, they have done an amazing job in actually informing us all, because they showed us where to look, they showed us what's going on. And this was a multi-decade campaign, you know, that we're now at the end of. And now I think everybody, if they just take a weekend, can sit down and within a weekend find out what's actually going on in the world. You know, they can find out about directed energy weapons, GMOs, chemtrails, nanotech, you know, microchips, whatever, you know, everything. And this is an amazing achievement. And guess what? Yes, it's true. Google was developed by the CIA. Yeah. It's using DARPA and NSA technology. That search engine, that wasn't developed by just a bunch of kids in a shed. No, it's the development, 30 years development from military research labs that actually produced this algorithm. And yes, it's true. It is a weapon. It was always designed to be a weapon. But guess what? It is a weapon. So use it. Use it. And that's exactly what we have been doing for the last few decades. We all used YouTube and we all use Google to inform ourselves. They wanted to hit us with a stick, and guess what? We took it out of their hands. They didn't quite, you know, factor that one in, because now we have all the information. And information is still flowing around pretty near to the speed of light around the globe. So please, whilst that's still going, download the information into your head, you know, number one. But then also realize this entire information campaign is coming to an end. And now we're moving to action. And what I would say is that now in 2018, we are in, I would say, the make or break period. We have basically two choices. And the former Assistant Secretary for Housing, Katherine Horton, a brilliant woman, she basically says, and you know, she says, look, we can do it the nice way, or we can do it the rough way. So there are two, what we're doing here, either the nice way or the rough way, is we're winding down a global crime cartel that has been with us for millennia, for absolutely millennia. I've showed you that, you know, we talked about the satanic pentagram being both in the Soviet Union and already established in the United States. And that's because this crime cartel has already deep captured the United States, not in the 19th century, right? Or not in the 20th century when they took over the Fed. No, the United States was put into deep capture in the 15th century when the first people arrived, because the people who arrived were from the Vatican intelligence agencies, okay? And the entire military operation. That's when this entire thing started, okay? And we've been in it since then. But for millennia, the globe was never so interconnected that we could actually pass the necessary information between each other within a lifetime. You know, we were always killed off or we died before we could reach enough people. Now that's not the case anymore. We can reach everybody within seconds. And I'm telling you, it takes decades to implant a corrupt judge or police officer or intel agents into a system. It takes decades to actually, or years to put through MK Ultra and, you know, corrupt people and make control files and groom them and place them there and pay them. It takes ages, but to uncover them takes seconds sometimes if you use the right database technology. So this is why we are winning the war. We are going to wind down this cartel. And there's a huge, a game theory simulation that has gone to the World Bank that actually says so. And this simulation has been proven right every single time the World Bank used that model, even when analysts were saying something else. So this has been reported by Katherine Horton. But I'm telling you that whoever is behind that simulation, those are, I think, one of our, you know, some of our best minds. You know, that's what's under the bonnet. So we already have the answer. We already know how this war is going to play out. And when I first heard about this wars, this game theory simulation telling us that the banking cartel, aka the mafia, aka the organized crime cartel, is going to be wound down and is going to be broken up, I thought, whoa, that would be a world premiere. You know, some people say this crime cartel has been with us since the last ice age. And we're now going to wind it down just like that in a couple of years? Like, how? And as a physicist and systems analyst, I was trying to find out how. And the answer I got was simple. It's number one, is the speed of information is much faster than the speed of corrupting people and grooming them and placing them and mind controlling them and monarch programming them. All right. So, you know, it's not going to compare. And number two, that is network mathematics. Network mathematics is the most nonlinear, you know, networks are the most nonlinear structures, most nonlinear systems we have in our human systems these days. You know, they are hugely powerful. And nonlinearity means it's basically the butterfly effect. It means that a small perturbation can cause a hurricane. Okay. So this is it, basically interconnected systems, and we have experienced that, right? Some little happy kitten video that a teenager just uploaded as a gag on their mobile phone to the internet suddenly goes viral. You know, suddenly everybody has seen it. How come? You know, the teenager didn't have the finance and the media advertising means. No, it was a meme that was very successful. And it just went like wildfire, you know, across the internet. So this would have been absolutely impossible even in the 90s. But now we're so interconnected internationally that we can do it like that, you know, and once we know where to look, I mean, just think, once you know where to look for the military bases, you can look for the food supplies. You can actually gauge how many people are down there by just looking at how many trucks are arriving. You know, we can find where these underground bases are. We can find who's paying them. We can find who's running them, you know. And this is it. So now, what we're in now, 2018 is the make or break, basically. Network, I call it network mathematics. Let's say game theory. So this game theory model tells us we have won the war. We are going to win the war. Now, the question really is, how quickly are we going to win the war? You know, how many people are going to be killed, maimed, and mutilated and have their life destroyed before we finally get to shut down this global crime cartel, you know? So this is it. So we've got the answer. Guys, we've won. Okay? We've won. And the reason why we're going to win is because the system inertia will ensure we're going to win. Okay? This is why it's the World Bank model says, I think at over 95% confidence level, we are going to wind down the crime cartel. Well, in scientific terms, it means we're going to wind down the crime cartel. End of story. They can literally shoot us all in the head. We're still going to win simply by network mathematics. That's it, you know? So now what the real problem is getting this simple fact into the heavily damaged brain of crocodiles and actually explain to them, look, guys, what you've been doing for the last couple of millennia ain't going to fly. And it's not going to not fly in 2030 or, you know, whenever. It's not going to fly in 2019. So could we now, you know, do a business cycle, a management change, you know, and could we cycle this massive corporation, aka the Crown Corporation, aka the Vatican, for the first time and actually cycle out of this crime enterprise here that has been going all this time, you know? So this is it. So now, how are we going to explode this across the world? Well, you know, your viewers are in the best position to explode this. I can't explode this around the world. But how many people did you have were taken hostage by YouTube? 47,000. I mean, if you can just post this video, you know, or make a short excerpt from this video where it's like, hey guys, now it's your time. Please, could you just retweet? I mean, how long does it take to retweet into the corners of the earth, right? Retweet it everywhere. We are connected. I think, what was it? It used to be 6 degrees of freedom between all of us, and now it's 3.5 through Facebook. So, you know, if we all pass it on over 3.5 links, we have reached every last person on this planet. So we are all on the same page, okay? That's number one. We're all on the same page. And the page says, we are winding down the organized crime cartel, the banking cartel, the mafia, aka the Vatican, and we're going to recapture our systems. We're going to cycle out exactly what you said, Alfred. They have captured religion, right? The mafia has moved into the Vatican. I mean, they founded it, but anyway, small difference. They have moved into religion, you know. They are actually doing child sacrifice rituals, and they have built a building that's called Nervy Hall. That's the head of a snake in the Vatican. They tell us they're the head of the snake, and they are, you know, proud about it and jeering about it. Nervy Hall was built in the 70s, you know. So we are winding down that snake, you know. So that's what's happening. These directed energy weapons, I can tell you what this stuff is. It's the crocodiles not getting that I'm going to sue their rear sides, you know, by the summer. You know, these neighbors that are getting rich on actually shooting me in the brain and trying to brain damage me as hard as they can. Well, you know, time's up. I mean, I've already collected their names, their lists. I've got measurements showing which neighbors are most likely involved. And, you know, we just have to get the data banks from the intelligence agencies, and they will tell us who they paid. So game over, guys, you know, game over. And now what we really need to do is everybody who has a brain, who has time, they don't need money. You don't need money for this. You just need time and you need energy. You all need to start helping us, and you have to help us concretely with the following. There will be scores, absolutely, you know, waves, a tsunami of court cases rolling towards the courts. What you guys have to ensure is that you amplify that arrow, the big, thick, fat arrow pointing at every individual judge who will be involved in the court case, so that these guys understand that if they don't decide in favor of justice, not in favor of the law, in favor of justice for once, their career is going to be over. And their name will go down in the history books, searchable within a microsecond. And they will be on the side of the crime cartel, you know. And you know, yes, you've mentioned all these underground bunkers and the Walmarts. And yes, they also ordered a lot of body bags and so on. And, you know, and FEMA re-education camps. And now we have to think the System Judo way and think, great, the system already got that into place for us. Now we just have to fill the FEMA camps and re-educate all these corrupt bastards, right? We just have to, they've built the stick, we just have to take the stick away from them, you know? So let's put the head of Walmart into the Walmart FEMA camp. Why not? I mean, it's just a single guy. It only takes 4 or 5 people to overpower him and drag him from his SUV on the way to work, put him in a FEMA camp. I mean, you know, after an orderly, you know, court case and so on, right? I'm not advocating violence, but that is what it's about. So, you know, the other thing that your viewers and the wide world could do to help us is to recognize that the corrupt fiat currency that they're being paid with, the cartel already built in that's not going to be worth much, you know. So all these corrupt payments that they're getting now, it's going to be worthless, you know. So if you're getting lots of money to actually shoot at me from just up the street, you know, from the opposite side of Langacher Straße, where I live here, you know, you get paid, but that money will be worth nothing, you know, because the crime cartel wants to asset strip us all, basically. So that's the big picture. And then I think your viewers already know what to do, you know. I think retweeting the smallest things can actually win a war. Retweeting, posting on Facebook, getting their faces out there, and actually all the honest people have to show their faces, you know. The AI has already profiled us. Who cares? You know, the AI knows who we are. It's just that we amongst each other need to figure out who we are, you know. Which one of us is really corrupt, which one of us is willing to fight. And there's no better way to prove that you're of high integrity than to actually take risks and go into the fight and lunge forward and try to take the stick away, you know. So I think that would be my answer.
Very good. Excellent. Well, are there any points or insights in this introduction to Systems Judo that you had wanted to bring to the table that you have not brought up yet?
Oh gosh, you know what, Alfred? I don't want to labor the patience of your audience. There's lots. You know, I've researched this stuff for 6 years. I could go on for hours. I could tell them
Oh,
about,
oh,
the Masonic influence and this and that and what it actually is in the front of the mafia.
yeah,
But
yeah. Well, look, we could schedule a continuation of the webinar. This would be like Systems Judo 2. This is actually part 2 of Systems Judo 1, but we could schedule Systems Judo 2 for another date. Would that be
yeah,
okay?
if you know what, I would say ask your audience and ask if they really are interested in this, because if
Yeah,
they are, I absolutely. And you know what I think we should really do, because I love also the webinars where you bring in different people with different points of view,
yeah.
because I think now it's all about synthesizing. That's what Dr. Plum.
Synthesizing, yeah. And maybe since you're really more of an expert on this, you could help coordinate this, like almost like a seminar series. Would you, what we call it, a webinar series on Systems Judo, and you could recommend faculty for it, like yourself. Would that be okay?
Yeah, gosh, I would love to do that. If people are interested, there's so much. There's so
Yeah,
much out there. Yes.
yeah. Because yeah, and so you could recommend people and reach out to them, and then they could come, and maybe you could be part of that. You could introduce them and do their thing and ask questions, and I'd ask questions. Would that be okay?
Yeah, and also one of the things that really worth gold is if people start thinking about problems in their own life, and then maybe they can also post us questions and say how can we, how, and then we brainstorm, because hey, I don't
Yeah,
have all the answers. How can we use System Judo to really solve all these problems? Because what I really, really want is for everybody, not just to listen to me or to the people who come on, but to actually start thinking themselves. Like,
yeah.
how would you do it? How would you save the world? That's the question.
Very good. So you've given the whole world a task. You've given us a task. Think locally, act globally. And great. That's the way to do it. Well, I know that you've had a long day and a long night, and we want to thank you very, very much. And so if people want to follow your work, you and the investigation team are at investigationteam.org,
So,
correct?
jointinvestigation.org. Jointinvestigation.org is my team. And everything I do is always under the label of Stop 007. So, Stop 007. You can find me under that.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Katherine, Dr. Katherine Horton, and we look forward to the second installment of our continuing webinar on Systems Judo. As an Aikido person, hey, I'll learn judo. Okay,
Thank
until
you,
soon.
Alfred. It has been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oops, let me go here. And